Hi, everyone. Before we get started with Holy Thursday evening, the suffering and passion of Jesus, I want you to take a look at this icon of the Last Supper once more. Make sure that you count the disciples. You'll see that there are 12 with Jesus in the center. And then there are a few special things that I want you to look at. First of all, you'll notice that the young disciple, John, is leaning in to Jesus. That's a very special thing that he is doing. He loves Jesus with all his heart, as all the disciples do, but he was one of the youngest ones. I want you to remember John because Jesus was going to say something very special to him in the days to come. The other disciple I want you to look at is find the disciple whose hand is reached out on the table. That is the disciple Judas. He is the one that betrayed Jesus. In all Orthodox icons of the Last Supper, you will notice that John is leaning in toward Jesus. He's always sitting next to him, and Judas is the one whose hand is reached out on the table. You will see that all the other disciples are just sitting ready to eat. You can also tell that John is one of the youngest because he doesn't have a beard. He has no facial hair. Well, on Holy Thursday, and actually all of Holy Week, we're really walking with Jesus on his last and final days on earth. We're reliving everything that he went through, everything that he did when we attend the services. We're very fortunate in the Orthodox Church that we do our services for Holy Week in this way. Tonight is a very beautiful service where the entire story of Jesus's suffering and his crucifixion take place. And the story is told over 12 gospel readings. When we get to the fifth gospel reading, the service kind of pauses because at that time, the priest reads about how Jesus was carried away and crucified. And again, it stops and the priest picks up the large icon. It's the big wooden cross with the crucified Christ in front, and a big procession takes place around the church. The church is dark, and the priest sings, "Today is crucified our Savior Jesus Christ." And then when they reach all the way around the church, the icon of the crucified Christ is placed in the center of the church. It's a very long service because there are 12 gospel readings, but it is one of the most beautiful services of our church. When you listen to the service, and I hope that the children who are a little older will be permitted to stay up and listen to this service and be part of the service, really try and pay attention, friends. Listen to the words because the words really are about us because we too someday will die and we want to be able to go to heaven with Jesus someday. So listen carefully to the words of these gospel readings. I remember when I was young and in church, it was hard for me to sit still for all those 12 gospel readings. And I would get antsy and I would move around and I'd ask my mom if I could sit down and she would say, no. I remember her saying to me, stand with Jesus. Jesus, think about what he had to go through. You can do it too. Stand with Jesus. And I always remember her words. I'd like you to listen to the Bible story in children's language of Holy Thursday evening. After the Last Supper, they came to a garden called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Stay here while I pray." He went a little way beyond them and knelt down on the ground and prayed, "Father, save me from death, but let your will, not mine, be done." Look at that. Jesus didn't want to die. His human side of him came through and he was like, oh, I'm going to go through something terrible. And he was begging his Father in heaven to not let him have to go through all of that. And this is a beautiful Orthodox icon of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane praying to his Father. He said, please spare me from death, but just like we say in the Lord's Prayer, thy will be done. He knew that whatever his Father had planned for him, he would do. And then he said to Peter, Peter, are you sleeping? Were you able to stay awake for even 1 hour? Stay awake and pray so that you will not fail when you are tempted. Jesus again went away from them to pray. He went back into the garden. When he came back, he again found the disciples sleeping. This happened 3 times. And finally, Jesus said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? That's enough. The time has come. Get up. We must be going. The one who is going to betray me already has." And as Jesus spoke, Judas Iscariot arrived, and with him was a crowd of people with swords and clubs. Here they are right here. And we know what Judas did. Judas had told them ahead of time that he would identify Jesus by giving him a kiss, and that this would be the signal for them to arrest Jesus. Judas came immediately to Jesus and kissed him, saying, "Teacher!" Right away, the crowd grabbed Jesus and tied his hands together. One of the disciples drew his sword and cut off the ear of one of the servants. Jesus told them, Am I a violent robber that you need to come with swords and clubs to arrest me? I was with you every day in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me then." And then Jesus immediately healed the servant's ear. Then all the disciples left him and ran away in fear. The men led Jesus to the chief priest's house where the whole Jewish council had gathered, and the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes. Peter followed Jesus at a distance to the chief priest's courtyard, and there he sat with the servants who were keeping warm by a fire. One of the servants recognized Jesus and said, "Hey, I remember you. You were with Jesus." But Peter denied it, saying, "I don't know or understand what you're even talking about." And then a rooster cry was heard. But the serpent again said to everyone, "He is one of them. He is a follower." And for the second time, Peter denied knowing Jesus. A few minutes later, the servants began to say, "You must be one of them since you came from Galilee." But then Peter swore, "My God punish me if I'm lying about knowing the man you're talking about." And right after that, the rooster was heard again. And then Peter remembered what Jesus had told him just a few days before. "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny 3 times that you know me." And Peter left the courtyard and began to cry. In the house of the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes questioned Jesus all night about his teachings. Many of them made up lies about him. They brought forward false witnesses who claimed, they said lies about Jesus. "We heard him say, 'I will tear down the temple that is made by people, and I will build another one that is not made by people's hands.'" Well, the chief priest stood in the middle of the council and asked Jesus, "Don't you have anything to say? What about all these things people are accusing you of?" But Jesus just remained silent. The chief priest asked again, "Are you the Messiah who we are expecting? Are you the Son of God?" And then this time Jesus spoke, "I am." The chief priest became so angry that he tore his own clothes and said, "We don't need any more witnesses. You heard his blasphemy. He says that he is the Son of God. What is your decision?" Everyone decided that he was guilty and must be put to death. Well, early the next morning, friends, Jesus was taken to Pontius Pilate. He was the Roman governor. And the Roman governor is the one who makes the final decision. It was the custom, though, back then, every year around Passover time, that the governor had the ability to release a prisoner as long as the people agreed. So imagine this, the governor standing up on a high balcony, below him are all the people, and Pilate asks all the people, Do you want me to release Jesus, the King of the Jews? Or do you want me to release Barabbas, this criminal? Well, the people that were standing below him were the same people that welcomed Jesus on Palm Sunday into Jerusalem, when they were waving the palms and saying, Hosanna, welcome. Here comes the King of the Jews. And now the same people were yelling, crucify him, crucify him. When Pilate realized that he could not get his way, he took some water and he washed his hands in front of the people, saying, I'm innocent of this man's blood. He has done nothing wrong. You people are the ones who are crucifying him. He ended up releasing Barabbas the criminal, and Jesus was taken away to be crucified. The Roman soldiers took Jesus, and they dressed him in a dark robe. Let me put it up close so you can see. They put a crown of thorns on his head. You've seen the bridegroom icon earlier this week. They gave him a reed like a king would have, but it was actually a stick. And then they made fun of him. They mocked him. They said, Hail is he, the King of the Jews. They didn't say it in a respectful way. They were mocking him. The soldiers took Jesus to crucify him. They led him out of the town to a place called Golgotha. Golgotha means the place of the skull. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning when they nailed his hands and feet to a large wooden cross. The soldiers divided his clothes and threw dice to see who would get to keep them. The reason for the crucifixion was written at the top of the cross, the King of the Jews, along with Jesus' name. Along with Jesus, there were two other people being crucified, one at his right and one at his left. They were robbers. They were people who were, I have an icon to show you. This is the icon of Jesus, crucified Jesus. Crowds of people came to see him. Those who passed by laughed, and they were saying, You said you were going to destroy the temple and build it up again in 3 days. Why don't you save yourself and get down from the cross? Well, at noon in the afternoon, the earth was covered by darkness for 3 hours, and at 3 o'clock Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? And at that moment, he gave up his spirit. He died. But the people around were saying, Listen, he's calling his Father in heaven. And then at that moment, one of the soldiers ran and got a sponge and dipped it in sour vinegar, not water to quench his thirst, but vinegar. And they put it in Jesus' mouth. There were women there watching in the distance. If you look carefully, you'll see Panagia, the Theotokos, Jesus' mother, and Mary, the other Mary, who was watching with her. I want you to think for a minute, especially the moms out there, how she must have felt watching her son suffer. But the steadfast faith in the Holy Trinity that Panagia showed during these days is something that we all need to take to heart and remember when we are suffering carrying our own burdens. It was dusk, and the next day was the Sabbath. And we're going to stop our story here. I hope you have the chance to watch the Holy Thursday services tonight. You can do it. You can stand with Jesus. We'll see you tomorrow on Great and Holy Friday. Thank you.